get started. I've said that a few times. I want whatever you got going on, get started. Get started today. Get started now. And get started doesn't have to mean cut off the camera, but start visualizing what this is going to look like. Start writing out what this idea going to be. Peace and love. What's going on, y'all? What's up? This is Javon, Dr. Love Jones, and we're here for the first episode of the GoldMind podcast. Man, I'm so excited to get started with this. It's been a while since I podcasted. I had a podcast I had before was a co-host, but I'm going solo dolo with this one, right? Before we get started, I just want to let you know that I appreciate every person who is listening to this podcast right now, whether it's in passing or you're listening straight through. And I want to let you know that you could be listening to any other podcast. You could be doing any other thing, but you're listening to what I'm saying. And I truly appreciate that. All right. Before we get started the podcast, I want to introduce you to our sponsor, right? Yeah, we got a sponsor on the first podcast. Yeah. And no, it's sponsored by Level Up, How to Start Living Your Best Life Now. This is my book you could get. It's available on Amazon, but you can also go to my website, which is levelupbestlife.com, where you could get a copy. You know, it's a very powerful book. I just republished it, so it gives you a better reading experience. You got notes in there, and I added a powerful story to drive home the point of how important the message in this book is. So make sure you get you a copy at levelupbestlife.com. All right, and if you go get a copy, if you go buy a copy, I will sign it for you. All right, so you get my personal signatures with it as well. All right, so now I see many of you never heard of this podcast. You're tuning in. You probably know me personally and just excited. Some of you might have been recommended, and if you never met me, even better, right? Or you could just been watching this podcast and saw the futures episode and you just wanted to go back and see where it began. And I welcome everybody who's listening. So before I get into the podcast, let's talk about me and who I am. All right. So my name is Javon, Dr. Love Jones. I'm also known as the Special Genius. Now, you might be wondering where I get the Special Genius from. I'm going to tell you. So when I was born, I was just barely a day or two old. My aunt held me in her arms and called me her genius nephew, right? I know, incredible. She called me a genius nephew, and I'm barely of age. But then, 5 years later, while I was in kindergarten, the district of the school said, you have a learning disability, and you stuttered a lot, so you have a speech disorder, and we're going to be placing you into special education. So you see right off the bat, special genius, right? Where that come from. So now I never agreed with the title being special ed. As a kid, I rebelled against that terminology many times. So what I end up doing is I decided to go for it, and I became valedictorian twice. When I graduated to high school, and when I graduated out of high school. See, I did 12 years of special education, but I was valedictorian twice, right? So I'm winning. I'm doing my thing. Now it's time to go to college, and I'm ready to do the same in college, right? So I'll go to college, everything, boom. I spend 4 years in a 2-year school, and I end up dropping out. But hey, you know, plenty of people drop out of college. There's a lot of successful people who never graduated college, right? So that was no big deal for me. So what I did was I made sure I invested in myself, my time, and been in different businesses, grown my mindset, doing the work. At the age of 23, I had my daughter, and I knew I wanted to impart some life and give something to pass down to her. So my life changed. So I was really investing, doing my thing, growing. But financials was not growing with my inner growth. And it was very, troubling, because now I got a mouth to feed and not making any money. And that was the first time I actually took a step back and looked within myself, and to realize that I needed to go deeper and recognize what I'm here meant to do. And I realized I got a great voice, I got a great story, and I want to share this with everybody. So what I end up doing is deciding to become a motivational speaker and a life coach. So I was so excited, and one of the things I wanted to do was write a book. It took me some time, and yeah, you see the book here. This is the book I wrote, Level Up: How to Live Your Best Life. And when I wrote that book, I'm telling you, it got lit. I published a book in 2020, and y'all know what's happening in 2020, but yet things were starting to happen for your boy. So got things going. I was on different podcasts, different shows. I was even on TV. I actually did book signings events in different states. I was in Atlanta, I was in Jersey, Florida. I was doing my thing. I was making things happy. Money was coming in, and I've never been in a safe where I said, look, something I did based off my own passion is actually paying me. And I squandered away a lot of that money. I didn't properly invest it in myself. I had a lot of issues, which led to my finances going down the drain, money being hard, and my finances just plummeted to the point that I was in the water. I felt like I was in the water with no land around, and I can't even swim. So I felt like I was drowning. And the harder reality of that is knowing that it was due to my failure to make the right decisions. And it got really bad when my car got repoed. I'm telling you this whole story is because after that happened, I had to go deeper. And as Wayne Dyer once said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. See, in my life, I was looking at this special terminology, this special ed, in a negative light. I was thinking, reason why I had to be messing up financially is because something probably is wrong with me. That was my framework for everything. When I messed up, I said something is wrong with me. They were right. I used to validate that. But when I took a look within, I started to realize every special moment made a pathway for my genius moments. See, when they put me in special education, what I became was valedictorian twice. When I dropped out of school, what I did was get myself involved in different opportunities and learn and grow and gain a lot of information, which I end up with my own growth and my shortcomings. I was able to put that into a book. And even with my recent struggles, it's now birthing this business and this podcast. All right. So I hope y'all guys got a better understanding of who I am. Many of you also probably heard me on the Gemini podcast. A lot of y'all probably know me from that, which I did with my homegirl Hoodoo Rising. Salute to her. She was a partner of mine on this. But this one is for my business, and this is the message I want to give, which is goal and alignment of my business. So let me talk to you about my business. My business is GoldMind. I know y'all can see the shirt. For those who's watching it on video, you can see the shirt. You can see transformation. Yeah, GoldMind Transformation LLC. It's a company that I started a few months ago, and it was a company I've been wanting to do for years. So what we do at GoldMind LLC, GoldMind Transformation, is we help individuals unlock their gold mine. You see, everybody has a gold mine. And what I mean is you have a mind that has a lot of treasure, a lot of information, a lot of valuable tools and assets that can help you create and live the life you truly desire and you truly want. But there's always blocks that's there that has kind of locked away all those information. And little by little, as you go deeper, you get more information. And what we help individuals do is to go deeper to get that information so they can live the life of their desires. Because my number one purpose in life, which is to help people who doesn't have that support system, doesn't have that confidence or belief within them, help them to gain that so they realize, because everybody is walking around with gold mines. This is not just me. Everybody has it. But how do we access that information? And that's part of what this podcast is for as well. So the main point of this podcast is just to now reinforce what we be doing in GoldMind LLC, as well as just give you guys information. Because one thing I want to help everybody here who's listening is to tap into their purpose and how to anchor themselves in their purpose so that they can achieve and be the person they came here to be. So while doing what they came here to do. And you can't do that if you don't know what's your purpose or what you're here for. And what we're gonna be doing is giving you tips on one, how to discover that purpose, but also how to stay locked in, be focused, how to have the accountability, how to connect with the right people. There's a whole list of things you need to do to be able to fulfill this mission that has been divinely given to you. Right? And I know all of us with this podcast and with the conversations I'm going to have with here, if I ever in the future get a co-host, right now it's just me, I may get a co-host, or when I start bringing on guests, all these conversations is going to help give you tools so you can tap into your inner self, your talents, your gifts, and how to use that to make your life a better one and how to help the people around you be better as well. All right, because your purpose is not just for you, it's to really make this world a better place because you're here. All right, so we covered quite a few things here, and I want to just, since we're here talking about this, I want to talk about getting started, right? Because I think that's kind of the hardest thing that we as people struggle with, is getting started. And that's the title of this first episode right there, getting started. The reason why we struggle with getting started, and I found that within myself, is that I always question if I had enough, or am I enough? When I first wrote my book, many of the struggles, mind you, one thing I didn't say in that story is how long it took me to write a book. And it took me about 5 years, because when I first got the idea to write the book, I went through a lot of my setbacks. And with the setbacks I was going through, I started questioning, am I even worthy of writing a book? Am I even worthy of giving information to help other people? I can't even help myself. How can I help people? So whenever people who struggle with getting started, it's simply because of that idea of not knowing if they have enough or they are enough. So I believe with knowing that reality, that's why it's important to just do it. You'll never know how good enough until you do it. Look, I'm gonna give you a real story of what I'm doing right now. Many of you who's watching the visual version of this podcast, you're looking at my background, and you might be like me, be like, yo, that's kind of a dope idea. You got a lot going on back there, but Or you could be like the old me who's like, oh my God, this background looks terrible. I don't have this, I don't have that. Wow. And I'm gonna tell you the story about this background. You see this little wallpaper I did right here? So I went to Amazon. I wanted a gold wallpaper, because my business, as you can see, is purple and gold. And I wanted, and a hint of green also. But I wanted to get wallpaper just so I could, make it gold and make it this beautiful thing. And what I didn't properly do is properly measure and get the right measurements. And when I put on this wallpaper, I realized it was nowhere wide enough, right? Maybe I should just got a green screen and just put it up, put whatever fancy background. But when I started to go do recording for something else, what I realized is this wallpaper this background looks unique. And it actually tells the story of my growth, because if I wait till my background is perfect, then I'll never get started. And what I had to recognize is that it's important to just get started. You don't have to be perfect. There's no need to be perfect. You just gotta do it. The more you wait for it to be perfect, the more you're canceling the opportunity for you to do something that's worthy. So just get started. Don't worry about if it ain't right. Don't worry about if it ain't perfect. This is why I want people to look at my imperfect idea and see the perfection in imperfection. Yeah, there is perfection in imperfection. You see, we always see things. Perfection is something we will never achieve and never attain. We're never going to be perfect at anything. But to the next person perspective, you might be as perfect as it is. Right? I hear stories about when a man meets his woman, this woman that he one day marries. When they first met her, they like, yo, she was perfect in my eyes, right? And it's not to say that she had no flaws. Everybody had flaws. But when you find something that's suitable and that's for you, it's perfect. It's like a custom-made outfit where someone tailors it to your body frame and you put it on. It may not be perfect, but it fits perfectly, and that's all that matters. And understand that perfection is not the illusion. It's the idea that it has to be without flaws. It's the illusion. Realize perfection lies in realizing that something that's for you is perfect. And what I want is my listeners who's listening to this podcast, who's hearing what I'm saying for the first time, seeing my imperfect beginning, realizing that this is perfect. What I got, the setup, just me sitting here talking to you, me, there's somebody that probably listens to my old podcast and just happy to just to hear me. Not because me and my partner, we had a dope chemistry and the podcast is great. Make sure y'all check it out, Gem and I podcast, right? We had some great times with that. But it might be somebody that be like, yo, I would like to hear me speak longer, and I want to speak to that person. I want this podcast to inspire a next person to get started, because it's not about the destination. It's about the journey. That's what we talked about in Gemini. For those Gemini fans, you already know that saying for that. But it's true. We always worrying about the destination and getting there and what it's going to be like. I'm telling you, just get started. The journey is beautiful, because here's the reality of this. I don't see a point in my life where I'm not doing this podcast. I don't see it. So it's not like I have, my goal is to do 50 episodes, 100 episodes and stop. That's it. No, I'm in the beginning phase. This is episode 1. This is one till forever, as I see. And I don't know when it's going to end. But what I do know is that this background is going to change. This setup is going to change. My equipment might get better. The visuals going to get better. There's going to be episodes where I'm going to go outside of my yard where in the daytime where my feet in the dirt and I'm talking to y'all because I do a lot of grounding. And I thought that might be a good setup for one of a few episodes that I'm going to be doing. Things are never going to be the same. Right now, this is the lowest quality that you're going to see from the Gemini podcast. And that's exciting to me because little by little, my quality is going to get better. When I did the Gemini podcast, I did that out of a studio. As you can see, or if you're listening to on the streaming site, you can probably hear not the same crisp quality, but we're getting there. And part of this getting started is not wait. I had to fight myself. I wanted to make sure I get this camera. I want to get this background look. I want to get everything started. And I recognize, man, I really don't need all of that. So what I'm telling you guys, just get started. The perfection is all an illusion. Sorry to tell you, it's an illusion. You worrying about being perfect, focus on getting started. I'm telling you, everybody who's waiting for you to do what you do, there were people who I didn't expect that was going to buy my book. I didn't know they would have bought my book. When I bought my book, I met some really good people. Like I said, I was on TV. I was able to do a lot of great things from me just writing a book that I was afraid to write because I didn't feel I was valuable enough. And with that, I'm telling you, don't worry about if you're valuable or not. Allow the information that you have to provide to speak for itself. As you grow, you're going to grow to be more valuable. I'm way more valuable now than when I first wrote the book. I'm way more valuable now than any other time of my life where I wasn't my best version of myself. So get started. I've said that a few times. I want whatever you got going on, get started. Get started today. Get started now. And get started doesn't have to mean cut off the camera, but start visualizing what this is going to look like. Start writing out what this idea going to be. What I'm going to do, and I hope you guys, if you ever decide to do a podcast, if you ever decide to do any great, write a book or whatever, write out your dream clients, write out your dream listeners, write out your dream guests, your dream readers, people, write these out. That's part of getting started. You got to activate it within your energy and in your mind. Because the truth is, the one thing to know about your mind, I'm talking about the GoldMind. The GoldMind don't care about what's real. They don't know. I say they don't care. Your mind has its own setup. Your mind is not worrying about if this feeling that you feel excited is really happening. All it knows is the pictures that you programmed into your mind by hacking into it and creating the visual outlook of this. I see this podcast being in a lot of seminars and motivational events, and I'm backstage getting like an Eric Thomas, getting a Les Brown, who was somebody I really want to meet because his story and mine is very similar. And just having a conversation about GoldMind, what we're doing, and the conversation, getting your purpose tapped in. I'm planning on doing something real big with this podcast. So make sure y'all stay tuned. Make sure y'all follow me on my socials. I am _Dr. Love Jones on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, even Facebook, Javon Dr. Love Jones. You'll find me there. And make sure y'all tune in. This is going to be a new episode every week. From the time you're listening, I want to thank everybody once again for listening and getting to this point of the podcast. Happy 2024. And I can't end it like this. I'm going to give you one more gem. This is the last gem I want to give to you guys. The gem is this: do it now. See, when you make a decision to get started now, today, in this moment, you're setting the universe to start to put things, resources, people, all into favor. When I decided, right, I'm going to do my podcast, all I saw was videos on my YouTube, podcasts, getting started, podcasts, all this information. It got to the point that I was getting into too many information at one time. But it just shows that information for whatever you want. If you want to write a book, if you want to start a business, if you want to figure out how it is and you start the business with a purpose-driven idea that you have within, there's answers that is out there. Just get started. Peace and love. I'm Dr. Love Jones. I'm out. See you later. Have a great one.